up into December, my team leader had left to go back on R&R to see his wife. And so we kind of merged teams, and it wasn't our normal team that came together. And we were put out on a surveillance mission. And at that time, helicopters were being shot down pretty rapidly for us. And so they grounded all helicopters unless it was for, medevac support or those things. And so they put us in Humvees, and we were riding around, you can imagine, with no doors, as much sandbag and armor as we could build ourselves. It's a Mad Max mobile. And being in there, and, we get the call, we're going to go do this mission. So we rally up, there's 8 of us, 3 vehicles, and we're supposed to go out and find this regime loyalist's home and call up moving targets and take them out if necessary. And en route, we got ambushed. We were hit by 3 RPGs, 3 IEDs, a hail of small arm gunfire. And I was in the lead vehicle. I was the TC, the truck commander, and in charge. And we got hit, and I used my body as a shield to protect my gunner. He was on the 50 cal, and the 50 cal is the most important thing. It's the most casualty-producing weapon that we have. And so I used my body as a shield, and I was shot in the arm, the chest, took 11 pieces of shrapnel. So when we were hit, 3 IEDs went off at the same time. An RPG skipped off in front of the road behind us and then hit the 3rd vehicle in the right quarter panel, messed the vehicle up. My buddy Bruce Robinson lost his right leg, took 183 pieces of shrapnel. McAllister, my gunner, he was wounded. Shrapnel and a bullet went off my helmet into his buttocks, and he was hit directly as well. And we were firing in silence the enemy. We took out all the guys, and I moved the guys out of the kill zone. And when we got out, my driver, Gilmer, looked over at me. He said, "Man, you're bleeding. You're messed up. Are you all right?" And I looked down. I'm like, "Oh, these dickheads have got me. I can't believe it." But I really wasn't feeling anything because the adrenaline was so high and intense. Like, I knew I'd been hit, but just didn't think of it. And so when I looked down, but I was just so worried about everybody else. So I got out in the check on everyone, and I went to the rear vehicle, and I saw Bruce. So Bruce was in the back of his vehicle, and was a cargo Humvee with a gun in the back of it, and he's laying there, and there's just blood everywhere from him. I mean, it's 2 to 3 inches deep. He's laying in it. And while we were back there checking on him, we were ambushed again by 15 more guys. And so we were pissed. We rallied together and fought the enemy off. I remember just walking towards them, lobbing 2 or 3 grenade rounds, one after the other, until I was out. And after we killed those guys, we came back to the vehicle, and then I called in the QRF, which was the 82nd at the time, and called those guys and told them we were hit and we needed help. And so they sent out a medevac bird, or we called in a medevac bird, and the QRF showed up. And then I remember when they showed up, I felt so relieved. And I just remember, I wouldn't stop until those guys showed up. And then I remember when they sat me down and put me on a stretcher, and they ripped everything off, and I'm sitting in the helicopter. I just remember it was cold, because it gets hot in the day and cold at night, and I was freezing, and your emotions running a little high there, and I just remember going to sleep. So I was shot in the arm, and in the arm it went all the way through my lower arm. So it didn't hit any muscle, just tissue damage. I was extremely lucky. And then the other one, the bullet went through the door jamb of the vehicle and into my rib/chest area. And it just then lodged itself right there. Like, I had a plate on, so it skidded the side of the plate. And there was just enough there to stop. And then the shrapnel, I was peppered all through my legs and body with shrapnel. But looking back on it, I was so lucky. The bullet could have easily pierced my lungs, or, I was just a lucky man.
Had the Humvee had doors, would that have prevented most of that?
If it was an up armored Humvee, yeah, but I mean, it would have just created more shrapnel probably, and limited our range of firing back. So it had its perks. I mean, it was the weapons and the gear and the stuff that we were given, and can't always have these $1 million machines rolling down with all this armor on it. Sometimes adapt and use what you got.
How long did it take for the 82nd to get there after you called it?
8 minutes. The 82nd was there in 8 minutes. The medevac bird was there in 15. It was incredible. We had a good group of guys. They showed up, and they were hard chargers. We'd worked with them there in the prison, and they knew of us, and we knew of them, and so they were a sight for sore eyes. It was a lot of healing, and then PTSD was never mentioned. Then they didn't have all the great perks and stuff. It was just go home. And so I remember it was on a Friday night. I showed up, and I had a bag full of Demerol and morphine and Percocet and every other narcotic you could possibly think of, and just said, go home, we'll see you on Monday. Well, I showed up there without any paperwork, so when I came back on Monday, that's where the real negative process started. It was, they just goofed up. My unit was in Germany. I was in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. They were sending me back to be with my wife. I was thankful, but the paperwork trail didn't follow me, so there was a lot of gaps within the system to assist me. There were several months where I was on my own, and I think that's where I started drinking. And obviously, when they hand you that kind of medication in that amount, that's where I really started my feeding frenzy of alcohol and medication.